Okay, the next quarterback, a quarterback who a favorite of this show, I would say, Anthony Richardson, who people forget, but like Stroud was so good last season, and everyone turned their attention on Stroud and the breakout rookie. AR was kind of on pace with him through the first 4 weeks. Like in terms of enjoyment and hype, Richardson was doing things. Again, he got hurt in 3 of the 4 games he played in. That was the big drawback. But a couple of his highlight plays, I mean, we're talking about whipping the ball into tight windows, running, multiple rushing touchdowns. Sometimes against the Texans, I think it was, he had 2 rushing touchdowns the first 5 minutes of the game. Richardson was one of the most explosive players to watch the first 4 weeks of the season, and he barely even played before suffering that right shoulder injury. This is going to be someone we're monitoring all season. He is supposedly back and looking great. Again, all these guys are going to be back and looking great. But Quentin Nelson said,
I bet he's in the best shape of his life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably. Quentin Nelson said, asked about Anthony Richardson returning to the huddle, said it's great. He's everything you want a quarterback, seeing him work around the building, working in silence, and then going out there and being a leader. He's been very on the details, and he's looking good. We know that Anthony Richardson is a high character guy, great leader of the Colts. But when you say, again, the talent that he has, we talked about J.J. McCarthy being someone who rose up draft boards in a kind of bizarre way because he doesn't have the super high upside of a guy like Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is the guy you take with the 4th overall pick as a question mark. That's the kind of guy that you go, okay, if everything comes together, he's going to be dominant. So when you look at the Colts this year, and we'll keep the pattern of sending this over to Ziggy. When you look at the Colts this season, the Texans have gotten a lot better, but they have a tougher schedule coming up. They have the Chiefs, they have the Ravens, they have the Packers, they have the Cowboys. The Jaguars, we don't really know so much about. Can the Colts actually find a way to win the AFC South?
I don't see how you can say no when they were 1 drop pass away from winning the AFC South last year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
no one's really talking about it, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, this team, because it was Gardner Minshew and sort of a band of what felt like misfits a lot of the time, sort of doing their best, which is ridiculous that this is how they were presented, but this is how the media presented them. The Colts didn't get a lot of respect for going 9-7 after sort of their quarterback of the future went down. I think things are going to be very different in Indianapolis this year. I don't know if you've been watching much of Anthony Richardson and the throwing he's been doing, but one of the big things in this rehab, he was talking about it. He and the Colts sort of treated this as an opportunity since he was taking so long off throwing to completely rebuild his mechanics and throwing motion.
Mm-hmm.
He looks so much better now than he did even last year when he was playing. And last year when he was playing, he was making some good throws, right? The Colts, again, like in free agency, they weren't the kinds of players people wanted them to be. But they managed to add a couple guys. They kept basically everyone that they wanted to keep. So they did things the ordinary Colts forged way. And the fact is, if Anthony Richardson looks and improves on what he was at the beginning of last season, he was already one of the most explosive rushing quarterbacks in the league. The throwing wasn't 100% there, but he made some of the most impressive throws of the entire season.
Go
in
watch,
the couple
go watch
weeks
the
he
highlights.
plays.
Some of them are nasty.
How could he not be excited for this guy? He's got a decent defense around him. He's got one of the best offensive lines in the league. The Colts sort of recovered after a really rough 2022 and a rough start to get better. How could he not be excited?
If the Colts defense gets it together, they didn't really address much of their secondary. They missed out on L'Jarius Sneed. Like the secondary is a big question mark. But if the defense can be average, you're looking at this offense with Richardson, Taylor, Pittman, Josh Downs. They drafted Mitchell out of Texas, a top 10 offensive line in the league. Like this could be one of the better offenses, an engine almost, But it all comes down to Richardson's health.
AR has attributes nobody else has, and it's exciting to see. And I'm a fan of his for the most part. But if you want to talk about pressure, this man's got a lot of pressure on him. I think these fans in Indy, and I guess for good reason, are expecting a playoff berth. I mean, they were, like Ziggy said, a drop pass from winning the South. Now, okay, sure, with our top 5 pick coming in healthy, like we're a shoo-in to make the postseason, which I don't think is necessarily true.
It's funny you talk about, you can't say you're a shoo-in for anything like that. But the Colts were, of all the teams that lost their quarterback, was Richardson with the Colts, Cousins and the Vikings, Burrows, Bengals, Rodgers and the Jets. Now, I do think Gardner Minshew is better than all the backups who came in. But the Colts were the one team, to really stick around the entirety of the season. And I think Shane Steichen is on his way to being one of the better coaches in the NFL, head coaches, at least that he'll be viewed in a higher regard from fans. This is a guy who was phenomenal. And look at the drop off in Philly after he left. I mean, that was Steichen on the Super Bowl run. And in year one, to lose your starting quarterback, Jonathan Taylor's not there basically half the season. Defense isn't playing too well. To manage that and to really come, within a drop pass of likely making the playoffs. I think he's one of the guys that you're going to look at as a breakout coaching candidate. And this is going to be a fun team because you do have now Jonathan Taylor who's in, and Anthony Richardson who's back, a second year under the head coach. Like, I'm expecting, and I'm not a Colts fan, but I am expecting them to be in the mix all year. And if they come out and go 6-11 or 7-10, that is a disappointing season, and makes you start to question whether or not what the future is going to look like. So it's a huge year for Indy, despite basically having it be your rookie quarterback's first year.
Yeah, he hasn't taken a regular season professional snap.
Well, no. Well, wait.
Right?
Richardson?
Oh, yeah.
Richardson? No, he played a couple
games
games
preseason.
last year.
He got hurt.
Remember that Rams
No,
game where he held his own against Matthew Stafford?
Oh, I thought he was phenomenal in that game.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
that was the game went to overtime, and Richardson.
Oh, there's my dumb nonsense of the day.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at how the Colts started last season, right? They lost to the Jaguars, they beat the Texans, they beat the Ravens in overtime, and they lost to the Rams in overtime. If they can get off to a hot start like that, I get that going 2-2 doesn't sound hot. But 3 of those teams were playoff teams. The Jaguars were really good the first half of the season. If they can replicate that, I mean, this team could be competitive for a high seed in the AFC.
Oh, yeah, especially too.
Or it could implode.
It could. No, that's the thing, though. I can easily see the Colts imploding.
I mean, is there a seed in the AFC, though? You are probably looking at, you got to win more than 10 games. Like, assuming Houston wins 10 or 11 games.
Yeah. But they won 9 last year, and they get to play the Texans twice.
I know. No, I know.
I'm excited to see. I know we have the schedules out in front of us, but when we really dive into them, Houston has a hard path. Given winning the division, you get the number 1 schedule. So there are a lot of tough games there. As good as I think Houston is, that could be a little they're going to be put to the test this season, and in some ways they weren't last year. And I'm excited to see how that goes. Any closing thoughts on the Colts before we move on here?
Colts Forge,
baby.
I remember me and Ziggy picked the Colts last year against the Chiefs. Remember that? And they beat them.
No, I mean, I'll say the Colts are one of my favorite NFL teams, actually. And Anthony Richardson.
Or Indiana guys.
Yeah, and you remember I was so high on Anthony Richardson coming out of the draft. I can't wait to see what this guy's actually able to do, because we saw just enough last year that I really believe it's not going to be like a Jamarcus Russell type bust. This kid's got something. Will it be enough? I don't know. But it's enough that I'm really interested to see what he's going to be able to do after a year.
Jamarcus Russell didn't care.
The Russell,
like Anthony Richardson.
No, the Russell bust is Caleb Williams.
Yeah, right.
But AR, ever since his days at Florida, I've been a massive fan.
Well, I mean,
he won me so much money.
Yeah, week 1, then they beat Utah.
Utah. That was $1,000 game.
Yeah, you've been on him since that.
I've been on him. Yeah. No, I'm a huge fan of his.
There's maybe no singular player in the league that I'm more excited to watch than Richardson's return. It's funny. Remember last year the Vikings, Bengals, and Colts Steelers Saturday games?
Yes.
And I can't remember what week it was. But can you think of a weekend?
Colts murdered us.
Yeah, Colts murdered you, and we lost. We couldn't get a quarterback sneak for.
I had the Colts in that game against us.
Yeah, we had 3rd and 4th and inches, and we couldn't sneak. Can you remember a slate of games with bigger playoff implications? Because all 4 of those teams were going after the playoff, where no one cared, at all in the NFL. The Colts and Steelers were playing. I remember I was out to eat, and I was like, I really don't care. This game is no interest to me.
I don't really care much either. I'm a fan. I didn't really care.
4 backup quarterbacks going for a wild card spot. It's funny thinking about all these teams that are going to be competitive next year. It was just the teams that all lost their quarterbacks, basically.